Hi everyone, this is Adam Law, once again with Wanderings, and today's video, on the day after Yom Kippur, is going to be about Sukkos. Sukkos comes out on the 15th of the month of Tishrei every year, and it's a special festival at the end of the holiday season. First we have Rosh Hashanah on the 1st of Tishrei, and then we have the 10 days of Tshuva, and that ends with Yom Kippur. And then 5 days later, we have the holiday of Sukkos, it's called Tabernacles, because Sukkos is well known for the fact that we dwell in tabernacles in a booth for a week. After Sukkos, we have Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. But today we're going to be focusing on the holiday of Sukkos. And the main things we know about the holiday of Sukkos are the Sukkah and the Lulov and Esrog bundle, which we're going to discuss today. We're going to talk about some of the deeper parts of this holiday, because one thing that's very unique about this holiday is the physical aspect of the holiday, that we dwell for a week in a hut outside our home. We eat there, we should even sleep there, as well as we wave these four species, the Lulov and Esrog bundle, during that time. A lot of people associate Judaism with a very intellectual type of approach, but Sukkos is a good example of mitzvahs that we do with our body. All my bones shall speak to God, shall praise God. And we see that when we shake the lulav, that we bring spirituality into our whole body and even into the vegetable elements. So first of all, where does the holiday of Sukkos come in the Torah? So we already see it discussed, the elements of the Sukkah, in the book of the Talmud called Sukkah. And there it discusses a few different psukim when it's discussing how to build a Sukkah. So it brings out a number of psukim, and one of the first ones it brings is in V'yikra, Kaf Gimel. Here it says the following. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, on the 15th day of the 7th month is the festival of Sukkos, a 7-day period for God. On the first day is a holy convocation. You shall not do any laborious work. For a 7-day period, you shall offer a firing offering to God. On the 8th day, there shall be a holy convocation for you, and you shall offer a firing offering to God. It is an assembly. You shall not do any laborious work." It continues in verse 39. "But on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gather in the crop of the land, you shall celebrate God's festival for a 7-day period. The first day is a rest day, and the 8th day is a rest day. You shall take for yourselves on the first day the fruit of a citron tree, the Esrog, the branches of date palms, that's the lulav, twigs of a plaited tree, that's the hadasim, and brook willows, that's the arba and nachal, the aravos." I'm going to make a separate section later where we show what each of these are, and I will physically show them to you, and we'll discuss each one. "And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God for a 7-day period. You shall celebrate it as a festival for God, a 7-day period in the year, an eternal decree for your generations. In the 7th month shall you celebrate it. You shall dwell in booths for a 7th-day period. Every native in Israel shall dwell in booths, so that your generations will know that I caused the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I took them from the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." So we already learned out a lot of things here. First of all, Sukkos is a 7th-day period, and we know it's when it happens. It happens after Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. It happens on the 15th of Tishrei, and it's a 7-day period. And it does speak about an 8th day here, but it says, "For 7 days you shall dwell in booths." This is the famous Sukkah. As well as you shall take these four fruits, you shall take these four species, the fruit of a citron tree, the Esrog, the lulav branch, the hadasim, and the aravos, and you shall rejoice. So you see here that you have to be happy. That's another part of this holiday. As well as you're supposed to take the four species. In Parshas Pinchas, it also speaks about Sukkos. But there it focuses on the offerings, and that we see there's a bunch of offerings that are brought for each of the days through the 7th day, and then even the 8th day, Shmini Atzeres, is special offerings. What's interesting is that the amount of bowls that are brought each day are reduced. It starts with 13 bowls, and then it goes down each day. The total number of bulls it brings is 70. And we know there are 70 nations in the world, according to the Torah. So it's interesting, the sages connect this and say the 70 bulls we bring are a special offering, in addition to all the other offerings of the festival and the everyday offerings. But we bring these offerings specifically for the nations of the world. A lot of people associate the temple as a specifically Jewish phenomenon, but the truth is there were always offerings brought for the sake of the whole world. So there are three main holidays that are called the Chagim, the festivals, and there are two other holidays, the high holidays. And these 5 holidays are in the Torah, besides the holidays of Shabbat, which we have every week, and Rosh Chodesh, the new month, which happens obviously at the beginning of every month. So the 2 holidays, which are the high holidays, we know as Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But the 3 other holidays are the festival holidays, where every male Jew would go up to the temple and bring special offerings on each one of these days and do the special celebrations. Passover is the first one, which celebrates the leaving of Egypt. The second one is Shavuos, which celebrates the giving of the Torah. And the last one is Sukkos. And what does Sukkos represent? It tells us right here in this pasuk that we looked at, in Vayikra, in Leviticus, that it represents the fact that we should know that God had us dwell in booths. So it's interesting, the idea of dwelling in booths, there's actually an argument about exactly what that is. Does that mean a physical, literal booth, like the sukkahs that we actually build and everyone's familiar with and loves? There's actually another opinion that it says it actually represents these clouds of glory, that God surrounded us and with protection. There was these clouds that surrounded us in the desert. It was a magical time we wandered in the desert. We received the Torah. And God protected us with this presence around us at all times. And actually, a lot of people believe that this is the significance of the sukkah itself. Whether we dwelled in booths or it represents the clouds, either way it represents the same idea. On Sukkos, we leave our big, regular homes, and we go into these small, fragile sukkahs. As a matter of fact, you're not even allowed to live in a sukkah that doesn't have a sort of temporary status to it, particularly represented by the roof, the branches in the roof where we have to see the sky. And those branches are called the schach, which have to be from a vegetative thing that was pulled out of the ground, like a plant, a palm tree, bamboo, mats, whatever. And we have to be able to see the sky somewhat through this. We can't live inside a regular house during Sukkos. The symbolism of this is that we attach so much to this world. The houses, the fixed presences that we live in, these places make us think that we have security. But the truth is, we should know from Jewish history that our only security really has ever been the security, the shade of God. That's why this holiday is called the holiday of faith. It's called the Tzila de Mehem Nusa, the shade of faith. That when we're outside in our sukkah, we recognize, we see, the world is a much more transient place. It's not this place of big structures and buildings and skyscrapers and mansions. But we see in the sukkah that we're surrounded at all times by these walls. And the truth is that God's always around us, like these clouds of glory, representing that God is around us at all times. God's presence is with us. It's like God is hugging us in the form of the sukkah. In mystical language, the surrounding light is called the Or HaMakif. And that's exactly what it means, the surrounding light. There are a few special mitzvahs we do at various times throughout the year, some even every day, which represent the fact that God is around us at all times. This is the idea that God is transcendent. He's around us. He's above us. He's everywhere around us. And this is the mitzvah of Sukkah, which really means covering. And also the mitzvah of living in Israel, because when you're in Israel, you're doing a mitzvah, you're surrounded by it. Also, when a man or a lady goes into the mikvah, they're surrounded by a mitzvah. As well as the tzitzits that a man wears, or talis. This represents the idea of God surrounding us, that God's light is surrounding us. But we also know that God's light is inside of us, that God's light is in every single point, but also inside of us. And that is what the Lulov and Esrog is all about. The 4 species, which I'm going to detail with the actual species later, are the lulav, the esrog, the aravos, and the hadasim. And we wave these on the holiday in all the different directions, up, down, and around, to represent that God is everywhere. Not only around us, but found in each individual place. And as us, the people who are waving that, we represent that we are the ones who bring God's presence into all these places. Matter of fact, there's a spiritual notion of the 10 levels. Each one of the different species is 7 total. because we have the lulav representing the spine. We have the aravos, which are long and thin like a mouth. We have the das, which is the myrtle, which is like the eyes. And then, of course, we have the esrog, which is round like the heart. And these are 7. But yet we're also in a sukkah. And that adds another level. And yet there's the schach above us too, representing the beyond, the infinity, the highest level, reaching up past this world into God. But yet that's only 9. What's the 10th level? The 10th level is us. When we do the mitzvah, the sukkah has value. We connect the lulav and the esrog. And we do that according to the mystics inside the sukkah. All 10 levels, the human using the 7 lower levels, and then the level of the surroundingness of the sukkah and the transcendence of the schach, all this together makes this mystical number of 10, the digits, all come together and unify the world. You see, because Judaism isn't just about learning and intellectualism and scholarship, it's also about this world. Mitzvahs are about this world. While it's certainly a high ideal to spend your time learning Torah and praying, it is also a thing to be involved in this world. We could say a blessing on food. We can bring God's presence into that food. And we can use that food to serve God during the day. Lulav and the Esrog and the Sukkah represent this completely. That this world is God's world. And we utilize these similarly disparate objects and put them together. And as the people, we activate them in this world. Right? The Sukkah represents that this world is a temporary world. That this world is a temporary world, and really, it's God's world. And we get outside of our homes and go into the Sukkah to represent the fact that we are here dwelling as temporary dwellers, but we are really in the schach world, in the eternal beyond world. And that's why the holiday itself is called Sukkah, from the language of schach. It's because the main idea is to recognize, instead of looking up and seeing our roofs, to look up and see the schach and see the stars, which should give us awesome, divine awe and mystery, as well as amunah. There's something bigger beyond us going on with everything in the world. And that's what Sukkot represents. God's protection of us. Feeling hugged by God. Feeling connected. Having faith that there's something more. And this world is a temporary place. So therefore we go to our temporary Sukkah once a year to feel these spiritual levels. A little noisy of a day today, but I wanted to show you guys a Sukkah. This actually is my Sukkah that I built. You can see here the Sukkah. My Sukkah has 4 walls, but the truth is you really only need 3 walls to have a Sukkah. And actually it could be 2 walls and a partial wall. So if you're living in a warmer place, for instance, you could have a Sukkah that is more open. But here in Canada where it's cold, we generally like to make more enclosed Sukkahs. So let's go check out my Sukkah a little bit. You can see now these are the walls. I haven't put the door on yet. The most important part of the sukkah, besides the walls, is the schach. You need to use vegetation for the schach. You can use tree branches, bamboo, palm leaves, whatever. Let's go inside the sukkah. Again, the sukkah isn't built or decorated yet, but you can see in the sukkah we have a bamboo mat, as well as we have some tree branches hanging in here. I need to rearrange things a little bit here in the sukkah, but the main idea is that you need to be able to look up into the heavens and see through, be able to see into the heavens in your sukkah. So you don't want to have a totally blank spot. Again, see here, this is kind of a blank spot. I'm going to need to cover that up a little bit before I use my sukkah. But if you do happen to have a spot like that, it's just best not to sit under it. Also, you don't want to be directly under a tree. You need to be, you can obviously have these tree branches that are part of the sukkah that are cut off, but to have a tree, like here we can see across the way here, there's these trees. If I were to build my sukkah under that tree, that would not be a kosher sukkah. So again, here you can see inside the sukkah. People make it like a place to live. You sleep, you eat in here during sukkahs. A lot of people like to decorate it, put up decorations, hang things from the roof, etc., to make the sukkah as pleasant and fun for sukkahs as possible. The 4 species. Here we can see a beautiful picture of the 4 species put together. Now it's not Sukkos yet, and I haven't built my 4 species, but I'm going to show you each individual species today and talk about it. But when you put it together, you can see what it looks like here. You see the lulav branch is in the middle. The hadas, the myrtle, is on the right. There's 3 branches of those. There's two leaves called the aravos, the willows, on the left. They're bound together in this holder. And then you see there's an esrog with the top, the pitom, sticking up. It's actually the bottom if it were hanging from a tree. But for our purposes, we consider it the top. And you'd actually press them together after you say the blessing. So let's look at each individual species. Okay. First we have here the lulav branch. The lulav actually, if you look at a palm tree, it's not the palm leaves that are coming out on the side, but in the top, way top of the palm, there is these spears, which are the lulavs, which grow in a cluster on the top. As they get older, they get drier and they spread out a little bit, but they don't ever become palm branches. Here you see, there is a minimum size that a lulav branch needs to be. It can't be too small. Some people like to have absolutely huge ones. The main thing is that it's green, it's not brittle and falling apart. We like to shake it so that, therefore, it should be able to shake easily and make a nice noise. I don't want to do it yet on this lulav, but let's look at it. One of the most important things for the kashrus of the lulav, let's get in view here, is at the top. See, they have these leaves. These are all little separate leaves. Is that the top middle leaves are stuck together, that it can't be broken. As the lulav ages, the leaves separate more. And so you get these two top leaves, the two top middle leaves, and make sure that on the way top, they're not broken very much, that they're stuck together. So that's the lulav. So this is the myrtle. This, you can see, it's a beautiful and nice smelling tree. It's more like a bush, and it's called the hadas. It is likened to the eye, and you can see why. Again, for the tops of these, they must not be broken off. And there also has to be a minimum size. The more, you can see there's actually these lines of 3 leaves on each branch. The more connected those 3 leaves are, the more they're in a line, they're called mishulash, the more kosher and beautiful it is. And again, on the holiday, we like to have the most beautiful ones possible. Now, the quote-unquote lowest one is the aravos, arve nachal. These willow trees grow by water. And again, you don't want lots of leaves to be breaking off, though they do, during the holiday, get dry and start falling off. But as long as you have most of them on there, you're okay. People prefer to have a red branch. And again, at the top, you don't want it to be broken off at the top. It's very important for that to be the case. Again, you can have 3 myrtles, hadas, and 2 aravos. Last, but certainly not least, is our favorite, the esrog. Esrogim are a citrus fruit. You're not going to find them in Canada, except when they're shipped over here. They grow in sunny places like Florida, California, and of course, Israel, Morocco, Spain, etc. We prefer, for the kashrus of a esrog, for it to be more long and cylindrical shaped like this, and not circular. It's called a pre-eitz hadar, a beautiful fruit in the Torah. Therefore, we have certain traits which we believe to be the most beautiful. Some of them just make it more muhudar, more beautiful and kosher to use, and therefore more expensive. And these can be quite expensive for the holiday. But some of them are actually make it kosher or not kosher. If part of the skin is ripped off, or there are too many dark black or brown spots on it, it will not be kosher. Particularly if there's a lot of spots and stuff along the top here of the esrog. At the top, we call the pitom. It can have a pitom or not a pitom. Sometimes they break off while growing, and you'll see one without a pitom, and that's okay. You'll see like a little scab there where it was. However, if it breaks off after the esrog was cut from the tree, in that case, the whole thing is not kosher if it breaks off. So if during the holiday it breaks off, it's not kosher. This is actually a very beautiful esrog. You can see, the more yellow it is, the better for an esrog during the holiday. You don't want it to be too dark green. It's not considered beautiful for the purpose of the holiday. Again, beautiful is these considerations which I'm mentioning. It's not what an individual might think is beautiful. This is just another very beautiful esrog. This one has a girdle. We call this like a Hasidic esrog. You can see it has this like belt along the middle. It really doesn't make much of a difference. It's about preference, but you can see the bumpiness, the grooves, the shape of it makes this a very beautiful esrog. As well as the top, the pitom is beautiful. It's big, won't break off easily. And you can see it's basically straight. These are 2 very beautiful esrogim. So that's the 4 species. Again, you bind them together, and then the esrog obviously is separate. And then when you make the bracha, you turn the esrog upside down like this, and you put it next to it, and then you shake it. You shake the lulav and esrog bundle in every direction, and up and down. So 6 different directions. And according to your tradition, you wave it in different directions. There's a mystical tradition and a more normal tradition. And different people have their minhag, their tradition, according to what they like to do. And we do this every day of the holiday, but it's particularly a mitzvah to do it at the beginning of the holiday and the first day or 2 days of the holiday. So that's the Arba Minim. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll talk more about Sukkos. Thank you. The first day of Sukkos, and that's actually 2 days in the diaspora, as it says in the Torah, is a holiday in itself. And it's a festival holiday where we say special festival prayers, which we say at Passover, Shavuos, as well as Sukkos, of course. And there we say the Hallel, the beautiful praising of God. And we also do hakafos. We say these special mystical intonations as we wander around the bima, holding our Lulov and Esrog, as Sifrei Torah, as Torah scrolls are held, and we surround them. And this is all alluding to actually what was done in the temple. You haven't seen happiness until you've seen the festival of water drawing in Jerusalem at the temple. They used to get these very long aravos, these willows, and they used to lay them all across the temple altar. And they would do water drawing, because we know in this holiday is a holiday where we pray for water as well. We start saying the new prayers for water for the year, because you have to understand is that all the holidays are linked to the agricultural cycle. And in Eretz Yisrael, it only really rains in the Yamei Geshamim, the days of Geshem, of water, which is the winter months. All the water that it gathers throughout all Israel at that time is going to be very, very important for a society which doesn't have a lot of natural rainfall. And therefore we pray for water at this time. And so there's a special water ceremony that would happen in Israel. And even the old sages would go and they would dance and have these tremendous festivities on Sukkot. It was a tremendous sight to see in the days. So we emulate that a bit by having Sukkah parties and by having these festival songs like Hallel and the Hakafos that we have during synagogue services. We also say a Musaf prayer, which each of the days of Musafs is a little different, because as I said earlier, the festival bulls and the offerings were different for each day of the holiday. And so therefore each day we have to have a different Musaf edition during the prayers. It's also a special mitzvah to be happy. This is called the Happy Festival, because it's all about happiness. So a lot of people ask, how can I just be happy? You can't command me to be happy. Maybe I'm depressed about something. The very fact that Torah does command us at certain places to have feelings, such as loving God and being happy on a festival, shows us that it is possible to meditate on what we have and what is good. And that is why we are commanded to be happy on this festival and all the festivals in general. That Sukkot is a time of great rejoicing. We eat the best foods in Israel right now. All the best foods are harvested. It is called the hadasim, the festival of gathering as well. And we bring in all these amazing fruits like grapes and wheat and dates and pomegranates and olives, and we eat them in this tremendous festival of Sukkot. Some people even like to hang it from the roof, all these different festival offerings. So why is it called the hadasim? It is an agricultural festival at this time. And all these fruits are brought in. But on a more spiritual level, it's called the Festival of Gathering, because it's a time of year where we gather all the spiritual energies that we have learned throughout the whole festival season. You have to understand the festival season's been going on since Passover, and then Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and we're coming to the end. The hadasim means that we bring in all the spirituality of all the festivals, from Passover to Shavuos to Sukkos, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we bring it into Sukkos. And that's actually why Shmini Atzeres, which I'm not going to speak that much about in this video, but I will in the next, is the holiday which means Otzer. Atzeres means a storage place. It's the last chance, the storage of everything, the final storage place. We had this tremendous gathering together and connection to God that we had during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And now, Sukkos time, we're victorious. Like somebody coming out of a judgment, and they wave their hand in the air with the king's scepter saying, I was victorious, I made it through God's judgment. So too, we wave the Lulov and the Esrog at this time, and we rejoice for 7 days. It's like we get married to God again, and we have Sheva Brachas. We have 7 days of rejoicing, the 7 days of Sukkos, where we just have such a spiritual, wonderful time of connecting to God and Sukkos, and each other and our friends, and we gather everything in together. So Sukkos is an amazing, wonderful time for us to gather, whether it's in the booth, or if we're not able to go into the booth at the Sukkah, to wave the Lulov and Esrog, or just to experience the joy of the holiday with the special prayers. Sukkot is a special time, a gathering time of family. And it's the best when it's done in Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, where it's still a little bit warm this time of year. And you see this festival is going on everywhere, and there's music and parties, and there's sukkahs everywhere. It's a time of rejoicing, to appreciate life. Because life is valuable, but it's also transient, it's temporary. And Sukkot is supposed to give us the sense of emunah, of faith, of awe, and realize this existence is temporary. So enjoy it, but enjoy it in a spiritual way. We're not supposed to be so somber and serious all the time. There's a time for that, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Sukkot says you can also serve God with joy and with love. That's the Sukkot holiday. It's a wonderful time for gathering, spending time with friends and family, and doing this magical mitzvos, where we bring in the physical. Because it's such a neat thing that we do mitzvahs, kol atzmasai tamarna, that we serve God through the shaking of our body, through dancing and through singing and through the mystical lulav bundle. It's not just intellectual. It's not just something we see in a video. Judaism is meant to be experienced with joy, with love, with faith, with the whole body. God's presence is found in everything. Just like the exterior of the sukkah representing God's around everything, when we wave the lulav and esrog, we represent God's also inside everything. Our soul is the activator to bringing God's presence in the world. As the Kotzker Rebbe said, where's God? Wherever you let him in. This is Rabbi Adam Law. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great Sukkot holiday, and we'll see you for the next video on Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah. Be well.